Hey everybody. Uh-oh. Any feedback? Oh, I still have that. I still have YouTube on. Hang on a second. Let me turn that down. Last thing I need is to get copyrighted because of that. Watching an old rerun of an ARCA race. No, I don't want to remove. Hang on, I forgot I had the small window up too from last night. So I actually ended up taking a nap just in case I needed to go live for overnight tonight. I'm hoping I don't have to. Thanks. You want to know something though? That song that you heard, that's actually mine. I wrote that. I recorded it. So, really appreciate that. Maybe one day I'll release it. One day I'll even play it for you guys. May not be able to play other people's music all that well, but hopefully I can play my own all right. But, hey Blondie, good to see you. Nice. Thank you. Thank you. I actually appreciate that a lot. But yeah, there's actually, I'll let you in on another secret. There's others I'm working on as well. I'm trying to actually just make a whole compilation of songs just for the channel so that way when we're live we can just listen to. Hopefully they're just as good as what you think that one is. In any case though, we have to address the elephant in the room, of course, right now. And there's one side of this system that I haven't really talked much about, and I think it needs to get addressed, especially since, well, you see these little red polygons on the screen. Those are blizzard warnings. So we're going to be talking about some winter weather as well to go along with the severe weather threat. A lot of what we're going to be talking about on the severe weather side of things, we're already kind of aware of. There have been some changes with that. There have been some downtrends for Tuesday. However, as far as tonight's concerned, oh boy. Still trying to get things set up, by the way, so I apologize for the little bit of a delay that I got here. I didn't want to add another song because I didn't think it would take that long, though. And also, my computer's not wanting to do what I want it to. Here we go. There we go. Alright. So OZ's coming in still, too. Let's just make sure everything's up and running properly. There we go. Alright. Move this off to the side. And I should be able to see everything. You got good friends, grandsons as musicians. Perfect. So you understand how it is then. Love getting the opportunity to do this. Would love to do it much more. In time it'll come, I think. In any case, though, I think we're going to start out with severe weather here. We're in range for just about every day that we would need at this point now. Maybe on the edge of the range here in regards to Wednesday evening. But in regards to Monday, tonight, overnight tonight, I should say, this is what we have going on. We've been upgraded to an enhanced risk for severe weather. We're looking at the threat of all hazards possible, but in particular, we're watching out for the threat of tornadoes and potentially even a strong one too. Note that even though there is a 10% area, hatch risk has not been put in effect. There's still a little bit of uncertainty with this, but confidence has been increasing over the last 36 hours for this event. This kind of popped up a little bit at the last second. So this has kind of been added to this so-called sequence that we have for severe weather over the course of the next 3 days here. This would most likely begin around 2 a.m. So if I do go live for this, a lot of you probably will be sleeping, and that's fine. It's just part of the game. But that's what we have going on for tonight. And then, of course, we have the subsequent threat tomorrow. we still have a pretty large enhanced risk area. I don't really expect much in the way of upgrades. I'm somewhat skeptical of that 10% tor risk that we have here, or the hatched risk, I should say, at this point. The warm sector that we once had a few days ago with this region has been pinched off notably. But even so, if there is an odd chance that we get a few of those prefrontal cells to form, which can still happen, then we might be in business here and we could get a strong, even long track tornado from this, because the sheared environment is very good. I've been saying that for the longest. The shear environment is incredible towards the region. But instability and really that just instability in general is the biggest issue we have here. We just aren't able to have the same kind of juice that we had before. So for day 3 here, this is still an area that interests me a lot. I do think that we're going to have a linear mode of storms. Timing, again, as I've said in the last almost week now, really, with this setup, is going to be the biggest factor. Just how strong will those storms be as they approach this part of the coast here, and just what will we be dealing with in regards to any sort of re-intensification as well. So, looking at some of the data that we have available right now, HRRR is still loading, so we're going to have to jump back quickly to the 18C run. Maybe I should have waited till 9, but just trying to work with what I got. I hate doing the streams later because I know it's not convenient for everyone. Just trying to do the best I can here. But in any case, this is our trough that we have right now. This is going to be our catalyst for storms later this evening. Notice the particular calling card for these more intense severe systems will be these little troughs that are shaped like this. And they have this ski jump feature here where you see towards the southern half of the trough, it just kind of shoots straight up almost at a 45 degree or less angle. It's almost an acute angle at this one here. Hey, Liz. As we get later into the evening here, you can see that ski jump kind of intensify a bit more. Trough begins to evolve, and as a result, this is where we start to see our storm initiation. We could end up seeing a QLCS out of this event too that has the threat for strong tornadoes. So again, there's a lot of buzz, a lot of concern about this. So like I said, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on this. I skewed my sleep pattern since I'm still not working at this very moment. That changes next week though. But this is really going to be the last time I can freely do this as far as like overnight events are concerned. But I will be on standby to go live for this event. It would not surprise me at all if we ended up getting a small little outbreak from this even. Or even get a few strong tornadoes, which is honestly awful considering the timing. It's going to be after dark. A lot of people are going to be sleeping. A lot of people aren't going to be seeing it coming if it does occur. That's the key word though. Now as we get into Tuesday, tomorrow, like I said, shear in all levels of the atmosphere, prominent. Very strong trough, but like I said, the corridor in which we need for that warm sector and a lot of instability, not quite as impressive here. The timing is just kind of thrown off, so as a result, we're not really going to be dealing with quite as significant of a situation, although there's still chances for it. They've become much less than what we've been dealing with. How's Florida going to be? If you're over towards the Panhandle, you might see a little something, but I wouldn't expect a lot. I would mainly expect damaging winds for that region at best. Maybe a tornado or two is possible. And then in regards to the peninsula itself, for the most part, I'd expect rain for this sequence. A little further down the line, you may see some chances of shower and storm activity increase, but nothing as of right now that's just standing out as a significant threat at the moment. We are actually going to talk about the weather down the line here because it's actually been a few days since I've had a chance to talk about it. I've been putting a lot of focus on the severe weather as of late. Alright, and then this is where things are going to get a little tricky, especially considering I'm not in range at this point, I would say. But as we watch this progress off to the east, here's our troughing. And then eventually we do see that line of storms begin to pop up. The potential for a line of storms begin to pop up here. This little area that I'm running the cursor along here is where those storms would be as we get into the early afternoon. If this were to happen later in the day, though, I would be even more concerned about the threat of severe weather. But I would still expect the line of strong thunderstorms to go over towards the southeast coast here and over through the mid-Atlantic, bringing with it the threat of mainly damaging winds and tornadoes. Hail threat's going to probably be low, but nonetheless, we'll have to keep an extra close eye and see how things pan out with that. Another quick example of just how good the sheared environment is for really tonight and into tomorrow is, as we get later into the evening, it's not uncommon to see the low-level jet deepen, but this shear vector, the direction that we're seeing it in, the south to north motion, especially when we're getting up to about 50 knots around this time frame here, it does give good reason for concern here. I'm going to actually try and go ahead and look at a sounding at this point, and there you go. Especially the low-level shear is looking really good at this point. Instability might be marginal depending on the area, but in any case, though, if we're still getting up to about 700, 800 even, it'd still be sufficient enough. What you really want to pay attention to is this region down here, where you're seeing these wind barbs. The directional shear is not quite as impressive as what I once saw. But in any case, though, it does look like that we have good speed shear at the low levels. As we get towards the mid levels, it turns a little bit better. We have more directional shear. So as a result, even though this photograph looks a little crazy, it still would be more than sufficient and capable enough of producing tornadoes. So let's go ahead and progress onward to Tuesday at this point. Because, I mean, the shear vector at the lower levels remains. In fact, the low-level jet gets so much stronger, too. So like I said, if we can get any sort of supercell to dominate here and kind of establish itself, long-track tornadoes are still possible. So it's reasonable to go with the opportunity of having that, hence the enhanced risk hatched area that we have over here towards parts of Mississippi and Alabama. But there's going to be an inhibiting factor, which we'll talk about in just a second. Also, another thing is the low-level jet in regards to Wednesday is still pretty prominent here. So that's why I don't rule out the threat of tornadoes then as well. So a big thing that I'm kind of concerned with is, with the area of instability being so small for Tuesday, my thinking is actually that we'll end up getting... Well, the question is, are we going to end up getting too much what we call crap vection here? Just too many storms in a small area, which will basically hamper any storms from developing here, because they end up competing with each other for the dynamics in the atmosphere. Augusta, Kansas, that depends on what you would get hit with, because there's actually also a winter weather threat with this as well, which I'm going to be getting into in just a minute. Because if you're over towards northern parts of Kansas, or maybe especially over towards, I would say, west or eastern Kansas, then winter weather might be a factor. The further to the north you are, the greater the chance that you'll be dealing with significant snow, maybe even a blizzard. Really, the greatest potential would be more so towards Nebraska. So the closer you are to the state line, the better chance you have of seeing impressive winter weather, or significant winter weather, I should say. Hoping HRRR gets done soon. The new HRRR run gets done soon, so that way we can get the most up-to-date data here. Timing's changed a bit here in regards to the instability available here. Now that's a heck of a hodograph. It's an odd one, to say the least. I don't know exactly how I feel about those loops. Could be deviant motion from that as well, which is crazy. But in any case, though, shear's pretty impressive here. It's where the instability is stronger. We might have the threat for tornadoes tonight. Storms might be a tad bit on the elevated side, but still the environment looks sufficient enough. But this is where we have some of that really good low-level shear, both speed and directional-wise. Oh yeah, my area too. In regards to, we've been under like a fire weather warning for the last 2 or 3 days. Now we're under a wind advisory. So the rain is welcome. And after this point, I do think we're going to have a couple more chances after that. I don't think that we're going to see anything of major significance in regards to weather until we get towards maybe like the 11th, 12th time frame there, maybe the 13th. Like I said, we're going to be going over that a little bit later. So this is going to be a longer discussion here. Alright, so here's what we're looking like for tomorrow. Like I said, our area of instability is very small here. And the thing that is most that I find most eye-catching here is the fact that I'm using a convective model. Most times I'm using the global models when I'm at range, and I'll see something like this. And typically what would happen if the event's more significant, we'll see an uptrend with these convective models like you're seeing, like what I'm looking at here. Usually I would see something along the lines of 1500, 1600 joules per kilogram, much larger area. We're not seeing that here. It's a very small corridor. And where this instability is greatest is where our highest likelihood of stronger tornadoes, greater damaging winds, and the hail threat is going to exist at. The thing is, though, this area is very small. I expect a lot of convection in this region here. And again, this is why I'm thinking that we're not going to get a whole lot in the way of tornadoes. It will be a smaller outbreak than what was originally being forecast at one point. Still, if we go ahead and click on the hodiograph here, even this has begun to look a little bit linear. So low-level shear has gotten a little bit more linear as well. But even so, like I said, if any sort of supercell were to get out ahead of the main line here or become dominant, we could be looking at a pretty crazy situation here. Because everything else that you would need is just about there. This isn't necessarily a textbook tornado outbreak setup, though. At one point, though, it was. So there's some good news to be had there. Now, this is where I'm kind of interested in particular as far as range is concerned, because up until this point, I haven't been able to look at much in the way of convective models in regards to Wednesday afternoon. We are seeing a slight signal over here on our mixed layer Cape region over towards the mid-Atlantic. I do think this region probably would be most conducive for a tornado threat, albeit I would expect it to be small. There's still good shear over towards this region. Low level shear is still there. So like I said, definitely need to be watching for Wednesday as well. So like I said, we got a pretty active stretch ahead here. Alright, so one thing I'm going to look at, and I'm going to make sure to make a stark comparison between tonight and tomorrow, is the significant tornado parameter. Now, like I said, I don't really use this much. I mentioned this in last night's video. But whenever I see a strongly sheared environment like I see here, especially considering the fact that this is overnight, and this would be right around the sweet spot and where we would see storms fire, when I see these higher values like this, that is concerning. We're starting to get into fives. There's going to be a sector that's even higher than that. And then when I see a hodiograph like this, that's saying something to me right there. There is a little bit of a cap right here. And these storms are slightly elevated, but as we get later into the evening, I would expect this to improve a bit. So as a result, and you can even see it with this loop loop in the hodiograph right here. Look at that. Plenty of instability as well. All we need is the forcing. So I'm thinking in particular the peak tornado threat's going to be just after midnight here. Probably, like I said, about 1 or 2 a.m. Central Time. Might be something I'm interested in going live for, perhaps against my better judgment, but I'm going to see how it goes. Alright, so then we're going to go to Tuesday here. And notice what happens. We kind of drop off a little bit in regards to the SIGTOR parameters. From what I was originally seeing in the models about 4 or 5 days out, this looked really concerning. So it's a little bit of a relief to see this, but there are still little pockets right here where you're seeing red. No pink on this one, which is a good thing, because then we're getting into some pretty high values there. You can see it on the bottom of the screen here, our index. But over towards this region, over towards south central Mississippi in particular, like I said, Still plenty of low level shear, more than enough to where, like I said, and it's very conditional. If we end up getting a situation in which we have a dominant supercell, oh boy, we could still have some problems here. Another big limiting factor is also the lapse rates. They're not quite as steep as they once were before. You really look for about 7 over here towards this region, or 6 at least at the lower levels of the atmosphere. We're at 5.7 here. We're above 6, but towards the mid to upper levels, we're looking for 7s here. So we're just kind of dealing with an environment that's going to be most likely hampered by a lot of convection. Then as we go over towards Wednesday here, notice you do see a signal right over here, especially just off to the west of maybe DC even. So it looks like it could get busy over here. So like I said, multi-day stretch of severe weather looks like it starts to really ramp up after tonight here. And then Wednesday I really think might be a wild card, one that could very well surprise us. So now I'm hoping that the HRRR is only halfway done. Daggone it. Okay, so we're just going to work with what we have here. We're going to go at range with the winter weather at this point. Now for the most part, given the environment that we have, I'm expecting mostly snow at this point. Our low pressure, well, we might as well move this to OOZ. This is our low pressure here. It's going to be our factor for our winter weather here. Oh boy. No comment there. I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. But as we get into the morning of the 4th here, this is where our wintry side begins to develop, and we may even see blizzard conditions early in the day over here towards western parts of Nebraska here, eastern parts of Colorado, and then over towards maybe even southwestern parts of Nebraska. As time goes on, we'll watch this low deepen. The biggest limiting factor at first is that there's not much moisture, and the interesting thing to keep an eye on here is the fact that over here towards western parts of Kansas and Nebraska, you're going to start out as rain, and then suddenly you're going to switch over as snow as we get into the evening and overnight hours. And then as time goes on, you can see that's when we have the heaviest snow falling, and there's also going to be some very strong winds on the backside of this as well. So with that, we already have blizzard warnings in effect towards this region as well. Iowa, I think, might be the state that really gets it the worst at this point. And then as we go further along here, we eventually see eastern Iowa, parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota getting into the action. But this area of snow here eventually starts to kind of fall apart. We just seem to run out of moisture for a little bit. Really can't wait to see what this shows once we get the latest HRRR up here. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at said wind gusts here as well. So there's actually prerequisites with the blizzard as well, just so you know. You would have to have winds at 35 miles an hour, at least gusting or sustained would do, but you would have to have them for a certain time frame. I would say for about 3 or 4 hours. I always get it mixed up. But as you see, as we get into the early morning hours of Tuesday here, you can see over the next several hours, we get winds up to 40, maybe even 50 miles an hour, especially for those areas that are going to be downslope off of the eastern Rockies here. Then eventually, as we go further along, especially as this low deepens, we're going to see those ridiculously strong winds. Hence why we also have a lot of wind advisories and high wind warnings in general across the entire eastern half of the Mississippi here, and really over towards a good chunk of the western half of the Mississippi as well. You're seeing winds up to about 50, 60, potentially even some areas getting into 70 miles an hour like this corridor right here. And then as we go through the following day here, we're going to have pretty strong winds here, even getting into the Ohio Valley. We're going to get 40, 50 mile per hour winds here. Most of these will be in gusts, but don't be surprised if we see sustained winds well above 35 as well. That combined with the snow flying around is going to make for very treacherous conditions towards the region here. these would not be conditions that I would recommend driving in or really just being out in general. So if you need to set yourself up, I would do it now. Make sure you have all the stuff you need to stay warm. Make sure you have your food set to go. Make sure your shopping's done because tomorrow looks like it could be a pretty nasty day. And even after that, there still will be plenty of blowing snow left to go around for anyone over here towards the Midwest. So, I guess now we'll wait and see what the latest HRRR has to offer here. I didn't see your message there, Katie. You're already on the list. I hear you. I just want to, but my take on this is, though, and I just want to make sure I make it clear, without the National Weather Service, I'm not able to do this. So, that being said, I'm just going to leave it at that. So you know my stance at this point. And then also this is kind of a big deal, especially when you have severe weather events like this, because these guys are the best of the best. I'm literally looking at, this is literally their website that I'm using right now. So there you go. But in any case, though, I'm going to switch back to Radar Omega real quick, because I'm actually really intrigued as to what the radar is looking like right now. I haven't really seen much in the way of convection over here towards the region, which is good news. We're hoping it's, well, actually we kind of hope that it actually ends up firing a little sooner, because that would most likely slow things down just a tad. But we'll have to see how things play out. So go back to the radar. This right here is our area of interest over here. So I'm looking for increased amounts of convection right here as well. I'm hoping we get some, so that way it slows this environment down. Once we get into that time frame, though, where storms begin to fire, then I'm not looking for it. But we want something that's going to try to hamper this environment, because like I said, the timing of this is extremely dangerous. Nocturnal tornadoes are often known to be more, unfortunately, they're known to be more deadly. So that being said, anything that would limit this environment would be excellent, because a tornado at 2 a.m. is, especially a strong tornado at 2 a.m., it's more likely to be, well, unfortunately, it's more likely to be deadly in comparison to a tornado that would be during any time of the day, or even during this time. A lot of people are still awake now. I hear you. Same with my mother. So I understand your concern there for sure. Definitely understand. We do have a meso discussion that's popped up over here already. This was issued an hour ago, or actually not even an hour ago. This was 20 minutes ago. This is talking about the probability of a severe thunderstorm watch coming into play for the southern half of the state of Kansas here. Towards this region, the tornado threat's a little bit lower, but those steep mid-level lapse rates and instability will still allow for the threat of large hail. I do think that also damaging winds are possible. Tornado threat should remain pretty low over towards this region. I think it would be, like I said, it's really going to be the areas further off towards the south here. Also, with us looking at Radar Omega, you can actually get a look at the blizzard warnings. I don't know if you're still here, PJ Muffins, because I'm not super duper familiar with where Augusta, Kansas is, because, well, I haven't really traversed Kansas a whole lot. I've covered a few winter events here, but I think this is the first time I've ever heard anyone mention Augusta. So, if you are still here, and don't worry, Beck, spring is coming. Spring is coming. It's going to warm up. We're going to have these little spats where we have cold weather in between, but spring is coming. Especially as we get later into the month, but From what I've been seeing from April as well, though, it could be a bit of a wild card also. Really looking forward to doing an update or an Outlook video on that. But unfortunately, we're not in range. But in regards to that, I do think we're going to have some warm days, especially over towards Florida in particular, in the weeks ahead. It still may not be quite what you're used to just yet, but especially as we get towards mid-month and beyond, that's when I would expect things to start to warm up. Excuse me. What I'm most intrigued with, in particular with Florida, is there's still going to be a couple times where it gets cold. I would say mainly right around the 15th, but before then, you're going to get a little taste of spring, and it's going to kind of go back to winter. Oh, dang, I don't know why my fingers keep popping. But in any case, though, Florida's going to be dealing with topsy-turvy weather, but could be worse. You could be a little further off towards the north. We're going to have severe weather potential in my area on Tuesday, and then after that, we're going to be dealing with 30s and 40s, so kind of wacky across the board here. I can show you the temperature outlook real quick, though. So let's go ahead and do that, shall we? So for those of you that are looking for spring, this is for you, by the way. Actually, let me see if I can get the latest up here. I'm getting closer to being done with this run here. This is a big slowdown on my part here. It's the fact that the newest HRRR run has not fully loaded yet. Never seem to get the timing right. It always gets even weirder after daylight savings time. Here's some spring weather for you right here. And it even starts tomorrow where we start getting into the 80s. Then after the front passes through, we kind of drop back down to what we've been dealing with for a brief period. But then, if we go to the GFS and the long range, though, we're going to go back to that similar time frame that we were at. Oh, hang on. Make sure I got everybody's states in view. So we go further along here, you see the cool down after Wednesday, going into Thursday here. My region can't seem to make its mind up. It does look a little better than it has. We're getting into 50, not so much dropping down into 40 now. Yeah, it's going to be a stark difference as to what we've been seeing. And then as we go even further beyond here, we start to warm right back up here. So we get towards the weekend, I think you're really going to enjoy that. But it might start to feel more like summer than it does winter over there. So, or summer than it does spring, excuse me. So, I don't know if it's going to be exactly what you want, but hey. As we go further along here, you can see that over towards the north, we get more cold air moving in. Talked about this a little bit in my final March outlook here. See another warm sector setup come into play, and then this is where I start to think about severe weather returning as well. So we get into the 12th and the 13th here. And then you can see the battle between the warm and cold air continues. Spring and winter cannot make their minds as to who ends up taking over here, so to speak. So this is pretty much looking into the mid-month. We have another stout-looking system at this point. Obviously, looking at this range, though, I'm taking that with a grain of salt. And also show you what that looks like on the troughing here, too. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that while we're at it. I did mention I was going to do this as well. One other thing I'm going to do before we're done here is I'm actually going to take a look at the snowfall totals. I mean, we're so close to range now, it wouldn't hurt anything. Because one thing about me is I don't like overhyping events. So, of course, here's this week's setup for strong severe thunderstorms and winter weather as well. As we go further beyond, we see the weather start to kind of level out a little bit. We've got a zonal trough over here at this point. or zonal setup here at the Pacific Trough. Then eventually we have a new feature come in, bring in a lot more cold air to the south. Maybe, and I mean maybe, we could end up getting a winter event over here towards the mid-Atlantic. And then as we go further beyond, we start to see this ridge. This is where we start to warm up. And then this next feature here is what I'm going to be watching very closely here. Timing has changed now to where we're starting to look at it more towards the 14th and into the 15th. Stout looking trough, concerning ski jump look. Warm sector does look like it's a tad bit hampered right now, so we'll have to see what happens with this. It could uptrend, downtrend, but we're more than 10 days out at this point, so again, take that with a grain of salt. And as we go further beyond, we see another big trough coming in at the very end of the model run here. Still looks like it's a pretty active pattern across the board here. So another thing we're going to do, again, we're going to take a look at the precipitation for the GFS. So we're going to get a look at what could potentially be going on over the course of the next couple weeks. So of course, here's this week, heading into the weekend. Have a little clipper system come in. Starts out as snow, ends out as all rain. This is where things kind of get interesting for the mid-Atlantic here. Start out as rain, you get snow on the backside of this. Northeast could get into some action here as far as Sunday morning is concerned. Maybe some heavy snow possible there. Watch this lake enhanced snow come into play. Some lake effect snow on the backside to go with it. And then once we get towards the 11th, we have this piece of energy come in, gets kicked out by another trough. And then here's some winter weather, and then severe weather looks like it may be in play with this as well. Almost kind of looks like a carbon copy as to what we might get this week. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Obviously we're past 10 days, so definitely not set in stone here. Also want to make note of the activity over here towards the northwest as well. Very active over towards the Sierras. A lot more heavy snow left to come for the region. So go further along here. So we'll watch the northwest continue to be active after this point here. Then our next big storm system looks like it tries to come in around the 19th here. Still very questionable considering the fact that we're at 16 days range at this point. So now that we've gone over that, let's get to the snowfall totals here. So what I'm going to be paying attention to most here, I'm actually going to switch over to the blend of models here, because we're mainly just going to be looking at the system for, I would say, tomorrow, Wednesday, and then going beyond that point here, it's kind of more or less speculation as to what we could get. So we're going to jump to about 48 hours here at this point. Also going to do a little bit of model comparison here as well. But this is what we have right now. This is the blend of models. The median here for the heaviest snow here, and that's these areas in the blue and heading into the purple here. Greatest area right now is about 6 to 9 inches. At other areas we're averaging about 2 to 4, maybe 3 to 5 inches. Could be a small pocket where we could get locally higher totals up to about maybe half a foot or more possible. Then over here, there's a big corridor over towards parts of Minnesota, parts of Wisconsin, and then northern parts of Iowa here, where we get to about maybe 7 to 10 inches here. Obviously, the mountains are going to be the big winners here. But for the areas where we're concerned with blizzard conditions, the accumulative snow isn't going to be all that much. Once we get north of the border here, we get impressive totals here too. And then as we go towards, let's say, I'm going to go all the way up to the max range here actually at this point. Now keep in mind, this isn't showing what 24-hour totals are like, so kind of hard to say just how much of this will be from future events here, but considering the action that we're expecting, we are going to most likely see a little bit more snow over here towards western parts of Nebraska, eastern part of the state. You could, in total over the next 10 days, you could see maybe up to about 4 inches. There's a bullseye over here again towards the Minnesota. I would almost call this a tri-state region here. I think it would be fair, right? But between Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa here, right along the tri-state line. This would be a bullseye here, up to about a foot of snow possible. Over towards the northeast, nothing significant in totals overall. Nothing unheard of over the course of 10 days, but some pockets where we could see widespread 2 to 4 inches, some areas even getting up to about 6 inches. The mountains here actually look like they're pretty quiet on this one, considering the fact that typically with higher elevations we get greater snowfall totals. Not going to be the case this time. The storm track kind of favors a lot of regions north of the border here, but still widespread 2 to 4 inches with a couple pockets of 4 to 6 are possible there too. So now I guess we'll make our comparisons here. Real quick though, the one thing about these comparisons is the GFS and the Euro often will be a little bit more aggressive with the snowfall totals, particularly because of the ratio that we use here. We end up seeing 10 to 1 pop up here, and that's not always accurate, so I don't always talk about it as much. But in any case though, if 10 to 1 was the exact ratio of every event, we would have some ridiculous snowfall totals, especially over here towards the mid-Atlantic. Look at this, up to about 2 feet possible. Snow holes everywhere. Over here towards this region, over towards parts of Nebraska, could easily see up to 2 feet. Probably 3 feet in the mountains, and then over here towards, of course, the Sierra Nevadas, it's just flat out ridiculousness. But Sierras usually end up getting slammed with snow during this time of year still. Usually takes a while for them to kind of get away from the snow as a whole here. So looking at the totals on the National Weather Service blend of models here, another model that we would really not like to lose if we can keep our people at the National Weather Service. We could easily see some mountain peaks maybe even getting up to 100 inches by the end of the 10-day period here. Alright, so with that, we still have 3 hours to go on HRRR, Jesus. But with all of that in play here, that's pretty much all I got for the discussion. We did good to keep this under an hour here so far. I mean, of course, from this point, I'm also going to ask if you have any questions. Just feel free to fire away at this point. Yeah, that's pretty much a basic overview of what we have going on. Pretty busy next couple of weeks ahead here. Pretty busy stretch of weather. Okay. Alright, if you guys don't have any questions, I guess we'll call it a stream here, and then I'll just be on standby to see what happens overnight tonight. If you want to stay up, feel free, but don't do it unless you have nothing planned for tomorrow. But that being said, appreciate you all tuning in, and I'll either see you later tonight or I'll see you tomorrow.